Hey guys, I'm sitting here with Jake Eames, a guy who I've known on the internet for some time, and now for the first time we met in person here in Thailand. We used to have conversations by Skype. I thought of him originally as a vegan on Reddit. He started out really making a lot of comments on veganism on Reddit. He branched into YouTube. There were a couple of his videos in the past that I've showed it out on this channel, and you may know him recently because, like myself, he's been at the center of a storm of controversy. And some people have denounced him as a cancer on the face of veganism today, which lets you know you're doing something right. But yeah, I think there's actually some really thoughtful and worthwhile content on his channel. And like myself and like the other channels I'm a fan of, like Vegan Cheetah, I'm a fan of a lot of people I may not have that much in common with, but where I feel they're really being honest, being really real. So this conversation, we're going to talk about an honest and down to earth subject, which is kind of the contrast between the reality of Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai is a city in northern Thailand. The reality of this place and the mythology that surrounds it. As brief preface, I'm going to basically ask Jake his experience. But for me, during the last couple of years, I couldn't believe how romanticized Chiang Mai was in the imagination of many of my fellow vegans. And I was thinking, well, maybe it's gotten a little bit better since the last time I was there. Maybe it's because, you haven't been to a city in a few years. I knew this place well, 10 years ago already. And I got here, and I feel like everything's just gotten worse. I feel like the city's falling apart in so many obvious ways. Now, I'll start with a provocative topic. We vegans, Jake, we like to pretend that we'd never hurt a fly. We'd like to pretend that we'd never kill a rat. That if a rat came into our own homes, we'd make it a bed and serve it dinner and treat it as equally as welcome as our own friends and family. But on the streets of Chiang Mai, you see quite a few rats, don't you?
Okay, so I have quite a funny story about that. So yesterday I was walking home with my partner Nadine after the karaoke night that I actually met up with Isel and a bunch of other vegans.
Yeah.
And we were walking home and we were joking about the rats because my partner Nadine really does not like rats. Yeah. And
she's a bad vegan.
Yeah.
You should love all rats.
It's okay, I don't like spiders, so I'm also equally as guilty. So, yeah, we were walking past, and I joked about rats coming out of the water because the night before we had actually seen a rat, and Nadine, my partner, actually said there were water rats, like they just come out of the water, yeah. Right. So, no kidding, 5 seconds later, after I mentioned rats, 3 rats, pop out from, the sewers, through these little holes, and, as you walk down the partial sidewalk that's actually there.
See, that's what the holes are for.
Yeah.
They make special holes in the sidewalk that are big enough for rats and cockroaches to breathe and blow and come back up. It's basically like a rat habitat project. It's perfect. Yes, do go on.
No, like I said...
Increasing the biodiversity of this beautiful city. The holes in the concrete. Beautiful.
Something I'll actually comment on later. But yeah, as I was saying, no kidding, 5 seconds later, we walk past and these 3 rats pop out. And Nadine just jumps and screams. She's actually sitting in the back now listening to this, and she's curling up in the corner just thinking about this. Yeah. And here's me thinking okay, I understand, because I feel the same way about spiders as she does about rats.
Yeah.
And once again, I kid you not, 5 seconds later, I look down and there is a spider the size. Yeah. And we both just jump and scream. And this was at I would say near close to 1 o'clock in the morning. This seems when it's really bad, when the nightlife comes out to play.
Yeah.
And man, that was just and then of course the cockroaches that are just always walking around, and it was
I have seen a cockroach eating the blood of a dead rat. A rat that had been run over by a car.
Oh my God.
On the street here. Yeah, I mean, this year I noticed there seem to be very few mosquitoes in the city. I don't know if that's the season or if it's actual deforestation ecological. It was 10 years ago, I think there were more mosquitoes. But the cockroach game is still pretty solid here. Walking down the street, there were 3 women who had straight jobs, not students, who tried to flirt with me, in Thai, tried to speak to me in Thai. And I was really exhausted from the heat, and I just didn't want to deal with it. It was just walking and, normally, to be honest, it would be a chance to practice the language, to speak some Thai with somebody who wants to speak to you. And as I was kind of just shuffling past them, this enormous cockroach, went towards their feet. And because they were looking at me, they hadn't paid attention. They suddenly looked down at the sidewalk and screamed. All 3 of them screamed at this cockroach. I don't know if it quite touched them, but it was right at their feet. And how you grow up here, you live here, you work here, and you're still afraid of cockroaches. And that's human nature is a funny thing that way. But yeah, the cockroach game is on point. The rat game is on point. And I mean, all we ever hear on the internet is that this place is paradise. And look, I have nothing against cycling. I used to be a long distance cyclist. It's not a sport I do now.
Hey, I cycle as a part of my fitness as well. Me and my partner.
Yeah. So we're not anti-cycling, but as a place to go cycling, this is a remarkably terrible place to ride a bike in so many ways, including, like, I'll mention one. I think we're going to talk about the streets, but the rainfall. Have you heard of rain? It's kryptonite to long distance cycling. You can't ride a bike in the rain here. The rain will wipe you right out. And it rains not infrequently and intensely, and you can barely walk in the rain when it's.
I've only been here like 5 days, and I've experienced, I would say, everything that he's talking about. It's not like this is a rare occasion. This is regular Chiang Mai, to my knowledge, around this time at least.
Right. And I mean, just say, in terms of the city's infrastructure falling apart, this thing where the streets fill up with water. I'm sorry, that's completely avoidable, even in third world countries, which this isn't. This is really the wealthiest city in Thailand. And I'm living in probably the wealthiest neighborhood of the wealthiest city. And I mentioned one sense week. So you walked home late at night last night, after 1 a.m., or after midnight at least. Did you see any homeless people or people living in poverty? Like on the street at that time?
I didn't.
You didn't see?
No.
That's what I say. Chiang Mai, by the standards of the region, even in Thailand, the number of poor people is very small. So that wealth is obvious in many different ways. Now, I went to a hospital here and got blood tests done. I did some tests before I go to China. And the hospital, I'm not joking, it is better than the hospital system in where I just was in Canada. Because I tried to get the same test done in Canada before I came here. So I have this contrast directly in mind. And obviously by Asian standards. So in some ways, the wealth of this society is evident, both in the absence of kind of beggars and homeless people in the streets. I've seen a couple during daylight hours, just a couple. But at night that you don't see that kind of poverty. And in the opulence of the wealthy members of the population. And in institutions like hospitals. But riding a bike, holy shit. Every time you cross the street, you're risking your life.
No, You think he's just kind of like joking about this and making it more severe than it actually is, but the first day I got here in Thailand, in Bangkok, we were in a taxi, like driving to our apartment from the airport, and there were people driving down the safety lane like it was a lane down the motorway, and I'm just sitting there like, what country have I come to?
Right. Right, and they're going in the opposite direction. So they're in the safety lane, like head-on collision style. Yeah,
like I was sitting there just like, are there any road rules and what have I got? Because I actually did bring my bike here. I'm not going to be participating in like the riding up the mountain every morning, but we did actually bring our bikes here because we had been told, or everyone had claimed, like this is like the safest city in the world to ride your bike. What could possibly? And it's like, my partner is a pretty confident driver, but she would not even drive a car here. It is.
It'd be terrifying. Yeah, but I mean, like just even the surface of the road and like the sidewalk, if there is one, the absolute, there's so much of just like the concrete falling apart and crevices and storm drains.
Let's just say you'd have to bring a fair few spare tire tubes because I feel like you'd be running over a lot of stuff.
Right, but the cars can still kill you, right? I mean, in terms of the way traffic within the city, I think going from one city to the next outside of Chiang Mai is different. But we're talking about Chiang Mai. We're not talking about all the time. We're talking about this one city and the conditions here. So let me ask you to think back in your mind a little bit further. Mm-hmm. Like if you think back over the last, say, 2 years. I don't know if it goes that far for you.
About a year.
About a year. What was it you were expecting to find here kind of originally when you first thought of going to Chiang Mai? And then maybe what were you expecting, like sort of before you got on the airplane? And then what did you see here? Because I would think of that as 3 phases. Like maybe you got a little bit more realistic, before you came. And then how did the actual experience contrast to that?
Okay, so my general kind of like understanding of what Chiang Mai was like was basically just based off the vlogs that I had seen by like Julian Ryder Freely, but not just them, but like everyone who attended the festival. And basically like all I had ever seen was just like fruit, riding up like a mountain, riding up Doi Satep, and then going out to dinner. Like that,
right.
no one else ever kind of filmed anything else,
right.
like walking down the streets, the sidewalks, like there was nothing else. So my perception of what Chiang Mai was going to be like was like very warped because this is all I had really seen.
Right.
So going into it, I guess it had really been painted as a paradise. Like there's this wonderful fruit, you get to ride up a mountain. It's just like, taking this wonderful vacation in some tropical paradise. And I remember I booked my tickets with my partner to go to attend the festival. We booked this like sometime last year. And at the time I thought this is going to be great, it's going to be a tropical paradise, because what I'd seen was just great. There's been no real talk of anything negative, which was really surprising to me. But as time went on, it was like, what am I going to be doing for 21 days in Chiang Mai? Like, is this all that there really is? Just like eating fruit, riding up a mountain, but then what? I'm like, I started to think about those vlogs that I'd seen. I'm like, what happens in between?
They do the same thing every day in those vlogs. That's the problem. It's weird. I mean, look. I mean, the fruit here is okay.
Okay, that's what I wanted to touch upon. Yeah.
Do it. I mean, like I think you're going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
The fruit here is okay. But it's
there's some people that move here for the fruit, and I'm just like, you gave up everything you had in your country to move here for the fruit.
But look, for me, I can't even justify that if you moved here from Iceland. I know, I've lived in parts of Canada where the fruit is terrible. But to give you an example, I bought a medium-sized watermelon. It wasn't huge, and the taste wasn't great. It was an okay, normal watermelon, and that was 100 Thai baht. It's just okay. The mangoes are okay. A normal price for mangoes is 30 baht. And here, I've mentioned this before, but minimum wage is 300 baht per day. Not 300 baht per hour, 300 baht per day. So there were a lot of people who could never afford to buy a mango in the shop, or they couldn't afford to buy a whole watermelon in the shop. So this is also, in terms of how this, what is a luxury and what isn't. And again, I've taken Jake to a really cheap restaurant that local people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say local poor people, but they are working class people. It's not the poorest of the poor. And there, so like a tourist place, one drink is 75 baht. And we had, soy milk, vegan soy milk for 5 baht. So this is how extreme the difference is. And there, a whole meal is about 50 baht.
50 baht
right.
for
So as opposed to one piece of fruit for 50 baht. Again,
the calorie difference is crazy.
So, the prices compared to Western world is one thing. And, I've lived in all different parts of the world. But, compared to Hong Kong, compared to South Africa, I've never lived in South Africa. But I know there are all kinds of places in the world that have great fruit, like South America, if you live in Brazil or something. That also,
they have a lot more redeeming qualities to go along with them, apart from.
It's a weird thing, but specifically, if I was planning a bike holiday, I would not plan it here. It's kind of it's a almost uniquely terrible place to ride a bicycle. And when I've asked people, because I've been picking people's brains about this, and I'm going to ask you now too. Yeah. I said, well, what do you like about Chiang Mai? They kind of say things like, well, there are mountains. I'm like, yeah. With the exception of certain parts of Arizona, most of the world, you have, there are some parts of the world that are, the Netherlands, but most of the world, you can find a mountain if you're looking for one. And they say, there are a lot of cafes that have internet access. I'm compared to where? Compared to South Korea? Compared to, all right. But let's get back. Because the question I asked you was to look at the ideal you had. Versus the reality. So, because again, when you say you thought it was a tropical paradise, I don't really know what that means to you. It means different things to different people. So, how was your idea of tropical paradise different from what you actually encountered?
Well, when I got here, that was man, my partner can account for this. The first few days, I was in shock. I'm like, what have I got myself? Now, to be fair, this was Bangkok, but I'm like,
that's funny. That's funny because you're more honest with her than you are with me. We have a lot of honest conversations. Yeah. You didn't really. Okay, cool, great.
I was terrible. I was having a mental breakdown. It was so. I was like. You would not want to be around me for those 2 days. Wow. But it was okay, I was in Bangkok. That was a more established city. What is Chiang Mai going to be like? So I guess the tropical paradise was, like I said, it was the amazing fruit that everyone said. The fruit is just 10 out of 10 here. Right. And less the luxurious the weather. I thought, okay, sunny weather. What could go wrong with that? Right. And just like I say, just living this just holiday life where it's just you just sit around and seemingly do nothing all day. not so luxurious when you actually get here and realize there actually is really not much to do all day.
Right.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's weird. So I just say, something I think I've said, I haven't said it on YouTube, but, I could understand if you want to have a fruit festival or vegan festival in Egypt, you can see the pyramids. You can visit the pyramids in Egypt. If you want to have a fruit festival in Auschwitz, Poland, you can visit the concentration camp in Auschwitz. Like, there are places in the world where there's a major attraction that either has historical value or artistic value. There's some obvious reason to be there. But for me, part of what's weird is, like today, I was talking to you, we're going to go to the museum today. And now for me, because I have a certain kind of background, I'm probably, we're probably going to talk about it. I'm probably going to make it more fun for Jake. Because I'm going to say,
I brought him along.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say, this is interesting for this reason or something. I have some connection to the history and what have you. But if you don't have that connection, there's nothing here that's equivalent to the pyramids. There's no, like in a sense, there is no tourist attraction. And in terms of activities, I can't fathom it. Now
they don't involve exploiting animals.
Yeah, that's true. Well, look. So when people say, because you will hear this on the internet, that there are tons of like charming cafes here, or bars or nightclubs, that's true. But if you're a vegan who doesn't drink alcohol, 90% of what you see, like walking in the street, means nothing to you. Yeah. Like really, it's true. There are bars, nightclubs. There are brothels.
Plenty of them.
There's a lot of whorehouses. There's a lot of prostitution. But again, if you're a vegan, you can't eat anything from those. You can't eat anything even from the bakeries here. Obviously, you don't drink alcohol, and you presumably you're not here for prostitutes. Prostitution is vegan, and I'm not. But if that's not what you're here for, it's really weird. So I would just say as a disclaimer, I'm going to go back to having you talk. Some of my fans make fun of me because I interview people and I do more than I'm talking. This is an occupational hazard with me. If any of you come over to my house, you'll see it's a problem. But even within Thailand, I know other cities. And actually, one of my Patreon supporters was chatting with me about this, and I think he didn't get. Like, I'm not saying Chiang Mai is such a terrible place. I'm just saying I have lived in and visited other cities in Asia, but also even within Thailand, that I think would be so much better for a vacation, for living long term, whether you're a business person or what have you. And I know better places for riding a bicycle because I've done the long distance cycling. And where you can ride the bicycle and where there's really historical, ancient architecture there and so on. Anyway, so look, we took your story up to the difference between the ideal and the shock. So what came after the shock? Like, because you're onto a new phase now. You're no longer shocked. Like most of you've walked most of the city now. You've seen.
That's what I've been doing, honestly, for the most part. Just walking around.
Yeah, sure. And it's kind of a third world shithole. No,
If I'm gonna be honest and not try paint this picture like it's something that it isn't, then
not to put words in your mouth.
But
yeah.
I think a lot of people are quite afraid to actually say it for what it is.
Yeah.
And that's what I wasn't expecting because I had never seen that aspect of Chiang Mai on like videos. Yeah. People had painted this picture where it's like this luxurious paradise that you come to have a carefree holiday, and it was like you walk around and it's like all I want to do is go back home, honestly. Because I had intended to stay here for 21 days with my partner for like the entire duration of the festival. But we're going to actually be traveling out of Chiang Mai to places like Chiang Rai, and then we're actually going to be heading to Singapore because they're really...
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. But like this was just like recently organized.
Just to see Singapore instead of...
Well, it was like, what am I going to be doing here for 21 days?
Yeah. And I just say, so I have a background as a scholar of Buddhism, but when people ask me for advice on what to see here, I do say to them honestly, like, if you're not a specialist, if you've been to 3 different Buddhist temples, they all start to look the same. Like, for a normal person, if you don't have a highly specialized interest like I had, because I was a scholar in that field, I can't recommend you spend your time, like, going to visit every Buddhist temple. And, if you're not a geologist, I think all the mountains look the same. Like, you can see a mountain, and you can go back the next day and see it again. But, that's I have trouble giving people positive advice about that. Like,
I was talking to my partner. It's like if I hadn't met Isel here,
what? I'm the main tourist attraction for him.
No, but seriously,
I
like,
know.
If you hadn't been here, like,
I know.
Because who else am I going to talk to? Who else that attends the festival? And I'm not trying to say that like no one knows nothing, but like seriously,
Yeah.
Most people who have been here for year after year.
I know. And they don't speak the language.
That,
and they don't, they don't know the language and whatever. You know, so, but look, I mean, before I said it's kind of like a third world shithole.
Yeah.
Pardon my being honest. But really, I mean, it's a combination of third world problems and first world, because we've said before, it is wealthy here.
It's,
you know, relative to Thailand and relative to Asia and what have you. So that's also a weird part of it. So I in case you think I'm completely pure, I took Jake to a nightclub. It was partly because it was one of the only nightclubs.
It was how he's trying to seduce me and sleep with me. Yeah,
part of building. Yeah. It's part of bringing him over to the dark side of ethical veganism. But look, you know, at that nightclub, I chose it because I know there's no prostitution there. It's not this kind of vice thing. But again, so that nightclub, that was a completely authentic Thai nightclub. It's not for tourists. The music is Thai. 98% of the people there are Thai. That is the local culture.
Yeah.
But for you as a tourist, what is it? You know what I mean? What does it have to do with you? What does it mean to you? Because for me, I'm normally someone who never goes to nightclubs, and not a boast. But if you make the effort to go there and do that, what's the connection? You know. So, it's hard work to make friends everywhere, but I don't see the appeal of that. And if you're vegan, almost none of the local restaurants are anything for you, and so on. So yeah, you're left with, but the nightclub is wealthy. That's also this mix of first world and third world.
It's funny because I actually got asked a question. You know, like, how's your trip going in Thailand, and have you had any authentic vegan food, like Thai vegan food?
Yeah, right.
And it was like, I mean, I've been to I haven't been to many places, but like the only authentic Thai vegan food was when you took me to a place that seemingly no one else goes.
Right. Yeah. Because it's a place that's not for foreigners.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like,
yeah. Well, look, I mean, for me, the other question is, when I look at this, so, I mean, I feel there's a kind of ageism going on, too. People who are teenagers or in their 20s look at older people, including me, but, of course, there are guys who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They look at the older people as losers because they're here on vacation, or they're here as in retirement, in permanent vacation. But to me, I look at that kind of the flip side. To me, it's kind of weird if you're in your 20s, and you don't have any ambition, and I don't just mean ambition to earn money, but ambition to have a career, or ambition to change the world, ambition to do something, and you go on this kind of long-term vacation here. It's weird that those people are looking down their nose at people who actually did work a job for, 40 years and then retired. Like, you guys are the losers. Oh, you old people, you're not cool like us. You can't hang with us. But I mean, I don't know what's cool about it. And again, if you did have a job here, or you were doing humanitarian work, something that engaged you with the society, that could be rewarding. That could plug you into the reality of Chiang Mai. But if you don't, whether you're here as a so-called digital nomad or on vacation, I think what's meaningful here, the struggle, what life is like for real people in Chiang Mai, you have no connection with either.
I'd have to agree. Like.
Right, man. Look, I say,
I mean, like.
So, look, when I first brought him to my street, this is soon after you arrived, I warned him. I said, "Look, this is one of the best streets of the city. The rest are all ugly."
And like I say, you hear these things from him, you're like, really? And then a few days later, you're like, oh well, he was right.
Oh my god! But whether you're walking, I mean, if you're on a bicycle, the scenery moves more quickly, and I guess it doesn't feel as hot. You get a bit more of a breeze. But god damn, it's ugly. Walking past the 7-Elevens and just the rotting, broken down buildings one after another. I had people on my Facebook who were saying to me, like, I had just a photo of me doing something. They were like, they couldn't believe the incredibly ugly power lines and just the sense that everything is rotting. Not to mention that it's infested with rats and so on.
It's like even if you go to my apartment and just look out the window, you've got buildings that are like half being taken down and half being put up, and they're just in this.
Right.
This state of, like, nothing's ever going to happen to them. They're just sitting there as they are.
Yeah, well, that's... Okay, so that touches on another interesting thing, which is that Chiang Mai, I think when I was here 10 years ago, there was optimism for its future, and there was a ton of new investment, including in tourism. And now when I walk the city, so you're empty buildings, I see empty buildings of every kind. Yeah. Like, I see empty office buildings, empty houses, some abandoned, like, halfway through construction, but some complete, and the business out of business, and it's gone. But especially in tourism, like, obviously tourism hit a peak at some point in the past and then declined. But, nightclubs, hotels, tourist-oriented buildings, and tourist-oriented restaurants, there are tons of them that are abandoned. even in the wealthiest parts of the city, in the most desirable, and in the downtown core is really kind of rotting and imploding. But look, sorry, I don't want to seem like I'm beating you up, Jake.
No,
but
no.
I mean, so many of these things.
This is the sad reality of when you're here.
But I mean, look, so many of these things, I don't get it. Like, people, including like people I like here in Chiang Mai, they're not like close friends, people who know me. They invite me to go to a night market. Like, I know what a night market is. It's some. I've been to them. I've walked through them here, but it's some plastic stalls, and it's stinking hot, and you're drenched in sweat. It's some plastic stalls in a parking lot at night. That's what it is. And 90% of what they're selling is not vegan. It's either meat or alcohol, and it has nothing to do with, like, what's fun about it? What's so great?
That's what I mean. There seems to be this thing of, like, trying to glamorize something that's not glamorous.
Yeah.
Because that's all that's all they've got to work with, because there is nothing glamorous in the first place about being in Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
And it's sad that so many people aren't willing to talk about what they really see, or if they even really see it. If it's just...
Right. Well, look,
because like you can't miss it. Like walking down the sidewalk, you can't miss just like the rubble and the trash. Just
literal rubble.
Yeah, absolutely. Like not kidding. It's just like it's like they've started constructing the sidewalk. They've got to finish it. They've got all the mess left there, and they're just like, well, let's just leave it there.
Right. So look, for this video, we're not going to get into it. But I mean, I say, we've talked about this off camera, I feel like on a larger scale, the fact that Thailand's democracy has collapsed, the failure of government here, the fact that this is now a military dictatorship, I feel this is related to bad government as you see it in these things. That in a sense, the fact that the government is failing to manage the sidewalks and just obvious things in this, and the rainwater reflects the fact that currently, there is no prime minister, there is no constitution, there are no civil rights, that this country was taken over as a military dictatorship. So, and that's happened repeatedly in the last 10 years. They've had long periods of this. So, some level of mismanagement, or worse than it would be, management of those public problems is perhaps inevitable.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember watching one of your videos, and you were really upset by the fact that no one is willing to talk about this. No one seems like they care. Right. And I remember kind of sympathizing with you and being like, oh yeah, I kind of understand where he's like. But when you actually get here and you witness just how bad it is, and you see all these people just walking around, just not talking about it, it's like, how can you not even admit it to yourself, like that this isn't the place that you're portraying it to be? It's sad. It really is.
Yeah.
And just like and like a little story also about like this is kind of somewhat unrelated, but talking about the street flooding. Once again, it's one of those things, like, Isel said it to me, I'm like, oh, surely it can't be that bad. Right. So we were at a restaurant eating dinner together, and...
It's a charming night. We had this great conversation. Oh, okay, bye, see you. Right, yeah. At the end of the
I would say, like, 5 minutes later, the skies just opened, and it was like... Yeah. I think they refer to it as elephant rain. Someone told me. I don't know what the... Yeah.
I totally just
bucketed down. And within 5 minutes, I kid you not, the streets were just like, you could row a boat down there. It was...
Yeah.
Like, when he says these things, when he says these things on camera, he really isn't exaggerating it to, like, make it sound like it's worse than it is. Like, if you have your eyes open and you're not in this little world of, like...
Yeah.
And that's what,
Well, so, I mean, to wrap it up, it partly is the Instagram effect. Of just taking the moments of your life that are the most beautiful or what have you. But I think there are many other kinds of self-deception going on. And ultimately, I mean, I think the cost is a loss of potential. I just want to say, some people misrepresent what I say about the vegans in Chiang Mai as if I think you're all idiots. I don't. I think you could be doing something better with your time. I think you have the potential to do something better, even within Thailand or even within Chiang Mai. That's why I talk about social engagement, why I think you should be concerned about the government, about politics, about these problems. If I thought you were complete idiots, I wouldn't care. I'd say, well, and look, think about how if you guys are watching this, the young people who think you're hip and cool here in Chiang Mai, how do you guys feel about the retired guys who are over 70 years old who sit here? You don't look to them to save the world. You don't look to them to make the world a better place. Think, well, he's 75 years old. He's just retired and drinks beer in a bar somewhere. Well, I can't look at you that way. I really am looking at you. I'm looking to members of my own generation and Jake's generation. Jake is a few years younger than me, obviously. I'm looking for us to take responsibility, to shoulder that burden, to make Thailand a better place, to make Chiang Mai a better place if you choose to live in Chiang Mai. and whether it's through veganism, ecology, other forms of activism, organization, to be concerned and not just to live a life that revolves around fresh fruit, bikinis, and bicycles. But goddamn, let me tell you, have you seen one bikini? Let's cut it off there. All right.